RenderForest.com.
Hi all, I'm Trisha Peach, host of the Peach Buzz, a channel all about ministry. I was a full-time children's pastor for 17 years, and I love what I do. I travel and speak on kids ministry now all over the place. I love it. Of course, COVID slows some of that down, so a lot of it's more online. But I wanted to talk to you today about a really hot button topic. Everybody's talking about burnout, especially with COVID-19. A lot of pastors are saying, I'm so burnt out, I'm so burnt out. You may not be burnout for the reasons that you think you are. So there are some major causes of burnout that we need to look at. I want to address some of the major misconceptions about burnout, and I hear that all the time. And if you didn't know the statistics, 4 out of 5 people in ministry drop out completely before they hit 5 years. So that's really, really bad. So the statistics are not good. But let's look at what may actually be causing that burnout, the real reason you're burnout. Okay. Number one, we always say it's because you're doing too much. That's not entirely true. That's a misconception. They say you're burnout because you're doing too much. Not really. The reason is you are not working in your calling is usually what's happening. If you are saying I'm burnout, I'm done, you are probably not working in your calling. So the way to figure this out would be, if you look at your schedule, how much time are you spending doing what you know you're called to do? So if God's called you to do this, you're going to be gifted for that. You're going to have the resources you need. God called you to a certain ministry, and that's what you're supposed to be doing. So the problem is not that you're doing too much of what you're called to do. It's because you are branching off into things you're not called to do. Okay? Good example of this, when I was feeling burned out, I realized I was spending a whole lot of my time doing the things you have to do in a very large church, spreadsheets, budgets. These are not things I'm good at. These are things I have to do. They're the necessities. But my calling is ministry to children's pastors, ministry to kids. That's my calling. That's my sweet spot. So I needed to shift my schedule so that I was doing more things in my calling. This doesn't mean avoiding everything you don't like to do. Some of this is just necessary. You have to get it done. But which are you spending more time on? Which leads me to number 2. You may need to spend more time in what you're actually called to do. Why? You say, wait, I'm already feeling burned out. Let me give you a good example of this. I have never seen a pastor get done, 3 people have come to Christ and they baptize 5 and they have this baptism service and a fantastic prayer service and go home and go, I'm so burnt out, I can't take any more of that. That's not what's burning you out. In fact, when I do that, when I have a baptism service, I am on this upper level for days. I'm so excited because being in my calling is what refreshes me. That's what renews me. Am I tired? Yes. So say I do a kids camp. Those of you that do kids camps, when I'm done with my evening service, I'm tired. I'm 43. I'm exhausted. And I'm on this high because my soul is refueled. This is what I'm called to do. Okay, so maybe I spent 3 hours on this kids service and I'm exhausted, but my soul is refilled. Now you compare that to 30 minutes in a meeting that I'm not jiving with. It's not within my calling. That's draining me and I'm feeling just emptied. So there's 2 types of tired here. There's a tired doing things outside your calling and a tired because you're doing things in your calling. Also, I used to say this to my staff, there's a different tired when you're winning from when you're losing. When you're tired because you just keep losing, That's like a spiritual tired. That's a tired down in your soul, and that leads to burnout. But if you're winning, okay, people are coming to Christ, kids are coming to Christ, families are growing and being discipled, that's a tired because you're winning, and that does not lead to burnout as much. Can it? Absolutely. We're going to get to that in a minute. But right now, I want you to see that there's a difference between winning and doing what God's calling you to do tired, and you're operating outside your calling and feeling like you're losing tired. Okay, this is the one that leads to burnout more often. I'm wanting you to think about where you're spending the majority of your time. Is it in what you're called to do or what you're not called to do? Now, like I said, you have no choice on some of that because you have to do what you have to do. However, if you're spending the majority of your time doing what you're not called to do, you will burn out. It's just a matter of time. That's not going to work. And we're going to talk about that in a minute too. So you are probably working outside your calling. You're not doing enough in your calling, okay? And 3, I'm sorry, but you may be in the wrong position or at the wrong church. And that is never what you want to hear. But if you are in a position that you know you're not called to, and you know you're not gifted for this, but you're a placeholder, you're staying there waiting for God to send somebody else, you're going to get burned out. You are absolutely going to get burned out. I'm not talking about you took this because you felt God called you to it and you just don't feel equipped yet. That's different. If God called you, He will provide. I'm talking about you stepped into this for whatever reason and you're not called to it and you're just trying to hold the fort, you will burn out. And sometimes, and I feel this even as I'm saying it, guys, you may have been called there initially and God's trying to call you on and you're not listening. Ooh, I feel that even as I'm saying it, because I'm the same way. Corrie ten Boom, who was in the hiding place, hiding from the Nazis, she very famously once said, don't hold on to anything so tightly in this life that it's going to hurt when God has to pry your fingers. Anybody ever have to have your fingers pried? I have. It hurts. I don't like to let go. I don't like to give up. And there were times God about had to smack me upside the head with the Holy Spirit saying, time to move on. And I just didn't want to let go. If you stay beyond that point, if you stay when God's not calling you there anymore, you will burn out. You will, because you're going to be doing it in your own strength and not in God's. If God has released you from there, you need to go. I know it's scary. It's a step of faith. And faith is not always fun, but it's an adventure. Yeah, if God's calling you out, He'll get your attention one way or another. It eventually won't be something you can ignore. So are you in the right position? Are you in the right church? You need to look at where your skill set matches, what's your sweet spot, what refills you. Yeah, you'll have stuff you hate to do, yes, but what you love should take up the majority of your time, and that should be what your position is, okay? And maybe you can work within that structure and change it to be what your mission is, your calling. If you can't, that may be God saying, I need you more here. It doesn't mean anybody's bad. It just means you're in the wrong position, okay? For example, my doctor, I get this awful muscle cramp up here, and my doctor said it's because the muscle there is trying to do the job of the bone. The bone is supposed to be holding all of that up, and the muscle's not designed for that. So we each have a job that God's called us to do. So you need to do what you're called to do. Number 4, this is a big one, especially I'm preaching to me here. You may be burned out because you don't have boundaries. You may be completely and totally burned out because you have absolutely no boundaries or very weak boundaries. If you've read the Boundaries book, you know what I'm talking about. This means you don't know how to say no, and you will help with anything people ask you to do. And you've made everyone's priority your priority. Everybody's emergency is your emergency. And usually what's happening here is your life is happening to you while you're just surviving it. So life is happening to you and you're just trying to survive. Usually this means you start to go numb. You're just surviving one day at a time. You're not even planning for the future at this point. And when someone says, I need this done, you just, okay, because you feel like you have to. If that's you, I really suggest you read one of the Boundaries books. They're phenomenal. They changed my life. I opened my eyes. But I would challenge you to say, instead of all of life is just happening to me and I sit here and take it, you have a lot more power than you think. You have a lot more. And I always hear the excuses, you don't understand. No. You have a lot more control than you think. And you need to start thinking, what really is mine to have to carry here? What really is my responsibility here? And maybe it's time for some other people around there to start carrying their own responsibility. Ooh, ouch. And when you first take that step and you say, this is what I'm going to do, that's yours, you need to handle it. When you first start doing that, yes, you'll feel guilty, like I'm not being a good Christian, and they're going to test your boundaries. If you've never had boundaries or you've always had weak boundaries, they're going to test your boundaries, just like your kids will. If you say, no, you're going to wash your own clothes this week, they're going to be like, she doesn't really mean it. And they're going to test you, and you're going to have to stand your ground. It's going to mean inner strength. It's going to mean growth. But boundaries are good. We teach people how to treat us, and if you taught them to treat you one way, you can teach them to treat you another way. You need to have boundaries in place or you will burn out. And if you're burned out right now, boundaries are your survival. That's how you're going to have to get back to being you and to take authority, take charge in this area of your life, of that calendar. It's not just happening to you. You're piloting. Get your hands back in there. We know with Jesus, take the wheel. You're listening to God's direction, but God is counting on you to be responsible, okay? To be responsible with time. So that means you need to get in there and say, this is what God has for me to do. This is yours to do. I'm not picking up your backpack. You're going to carry your own backpack. And actually, that's part of love. Love doesn't do everything for everybody else. Love challenges those around you to go higher, to be responsible, to take responsibility. So you're not showing love to people if you just give in to them all the time. That's not showing love. And when you burn out and quit and drop out, that hurts the body of Christ and your family and your marriage. It's time to put some boundaries in there and enforce them, even if you feel mean at first. It is the loving thing to do. Number 5, you are burned out because you're not listening to your body. You're not listening. Now me, I was sort of listening to my body, but I just didn't care what it said. I was running like mad, and it's a long story, which I'll talk about at a different point, but I should have died one night from a bleeding ulcer that burst, and I had a less than 1% chance of survival, and I survived, and it was a wake-up call. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was just run, don't sleep, go, it's my personality, and God had to smack me upside the head there and say, you have to get some boundaries in place, and you have to listen to your body. I was kind of the opinion of just let's trash this body for the kingdom. Let's destroy this body because I'm sacrificing. I'm such a martyr. Isn't that great? No, you need to listen to your body. You need to listen. God made this body. It's not bad. You've got body, mind, soul, emotions. And I also would, when I say you're not listening to your body, I'm including your emotions in that. Because I was talking to another children's pastor the other day, and he said, I just start crying at the weirdest times, and then I don't know why. I don't know why I can't stop crying. And I said, your emotions are trying to tell you something, and you need to listen. If you don't, if you keep running your body like that, if you keep ignoring your emotions just to be a martyr, you will burn out, and you will drop out, and then the kingdom loses you. God put those in there. They're not bad. Your emotions are trying to tell you something. Your body's trying to tell you something. And I figured out the hard way, once you burn this out, it doesn't just bounce back anymore. When you're 19, go out and do kids' crusades and get 2 hours of sleep and hop up and do other stuff. And it doesn't work like that anymore. At 43, I don't recover that fast anymore. My body needs more sleep. I have to really watch what I eat. I have to exercise every day. I have to take care of this because when it's gone, I'm going to be with Jesus. And I'd rather not speed that up because I would like to get done some things here on earth before I go. I mean, it's up to God when he calls me home, but I also think I need to be a good steward of this body and not trash it so much. So that's what I'm trying to do. So what is your body telling you right now? What are your emotions trying to tell you? If they're telling you you're seriously burned out, you better listen, because eventually it's going to collapse. You're going to lose your health. And once that goes, you may not bounce back as fast as maybe in the past. You got to be responsible with what God gave you. If God gave you a really special, beautiful piece of pottery to use in ministry, you wouldn't just throw it down the stairs and chuck it in the back and let it get cracked and dinged up. You'd take care of it. But sometimes we treat our body like trash, like garbage. You should be thinking about what you eat. You should be thinking about taking care of you. It's not selfish. It's necessary, absolutely necessary. Sixth reason you're burned out: you have too many relationships that are draining you and not enough that are filling you. What this usually means is you're the counselor for everybody else. You're the one that listens. You're the listening ear. You're helping everybody else, but you don't have a lot of relationships in your life that are helping you. And unfortunately, this goes with boundaries again. Some people are emotional leeches, and it's more, and they're not growing. They're not changing. They're not maturing. This usually means some tough decisions. You may have to cut some people off, and it sounds terrible, but Jesus didn't chase people down and drag them by the hair. You only have so much of you to give. And there may be some people that are takers. It's not give and take, it's just take. Then it may be time to cut them out. And that sounds mean, but it is actually loving, because you're telling them they got to carry their own backpack. They're going to have to grow up. They're going to have to mature. And you need to seek out friendships. And the first thing I hear is, I have no time. I have no time for friendships. You don't have time not to. We're supposed to do life together. And you can't keep giving out unless you have people pouring into you. And if you don't have any friends, it's probably because you haven't nourished relationships outside of church. Everything is poured into church. No wonder you're burned out. That's your morning, noon, and night, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No wonder you're burnt out. You need friends, including those outside your ministry situation, that you can be honest with, and it needs to be give and take, meaning you listen to them and help them, and then they listen to you and help you. And that could mean praying, God, please give me that person, and then you will have to put time and effort in, because your marriage takes time and effort, your relationship with your kids takes time and effort, your relationship with those friends takes time and effort. All relationships take time and effort. So I would suggest cutting the ones that aren't going anywhere and pouring into some that will be healthier. It's so hard. It's so hard to cut some of them off. But I figured out some people in my life were pretty toxic and negative and pulling me down. And I thought, man, I thought I had to always listen to this. I don't. It was this realization, I don't have to listen to this. My life has been so much better and more positive just turning down the volume on some of those negative people and not making myself available every time they need to dump. They find someone else. Unfortunately, some people are addicted to that drama. They're addicted to it. And if you don't give it to them, they will find somebody else. And you have to just be okay with that. I would say talk to a counselor if you need to. I've definitely done that. Also, big one, you need to nourish your relationship with Jesus, because working at the church and a relationship with Jesus are not the same thing. You can work at a church and become totally cold towards God, and that will lead to burnout faster than anything else. Your relationship with Jesus matters, and it takes time and work. In fact, it matters more than anything else in the whole world. Number 7, you are burned out because you don't know how to rest. Our culture doesn't know how. We work 7 days a week. It's considered a good thing in our culture to completely be a ridiculous workaholic that dies young of a heart attack. That's like, yay, good job. And you want to think about that. We have to learn to practice rest. And yeah, it's a lot of work to have a day off, but don't tell me you can't have a day off. That's the first thing. I can't. I was working at a mega church, ridiculous amount of hours a week, and I found a way to take a day off. It's work and it's worth it. So if you're burned out, you probably don't even know how to rest. You don't know how to take a vacation where you're not working on your vacation. You don't know how to take a Sabbath day. You don't even understand how to rest when you're home and to unplug. It's work. It's really difficult, but it's necessary or you will burn out. So it's a practice of rest. It's a practice of Sabbath. It's a practice of vacation. It's very hard for pastors, but it's necessary. And last but not least, you're burnout because you really lack direction right now and you lack hope. They say hope deferred makes the heart sick. You can get through anything for a short amount of time if you're focused on this is where we're going. I can put up with this horrific 13.5-hour drive because at the end of it, we will get to Disney World. You can't do that forever if you don't see an end in sight. Yes, you can be in the wrong position for a while and God can use you, but eventually you will burn out. So what are you hoping for? Where are you going? What are you wanting to do for God? And I had somebody ask me that a few years back, what are you wanting to do? And I couldn't answer. That was kind of a shock. I couldn't answer because all I could think about was I need to do this for the kids. I need to do this for my husband. I need to do this for work. I wasn't focusing on a future and a hope. And the Bible says God gives us a future and a hope. And if you are worried that you derailed it, you didn't. You didn't derail God's plan. He's got this. You can't see where he's taking you, but he does. You're not that amazing that you toppled his plan. No. But you should be seeking God to say, God, I'm feeling burnt out. Give me a future to look forward to here. Talk to me about where we're going because I want to get my eyes back on you, God, and get my eyes on an incredible future that will help me hang on in this dark time. You have to be able to see this is not forever. This will pass. This too shall pass. I'm headed this place. The best advice I got was go back to God and just cry out to him for direction and a peek at that future. And I would go back to your calling. How do you know you were called? What did God say? Because I had in my mind, it has to look like this. And I went back to my calling and I thought, no, that's not what God said. This is my calling. I need to go do what God's called me to do. And it changed everything. So you need to think, what are you called to do? What did God call you to do? And I would say if God hasn't given you any new updates, then keep doing the last thing you know he told you to do. And wait for more orders. Because he wants you to know more than you want to know. But to know and hang on to there's a future and a hope, you can get through some pretty dark times. All right. I love you guys. Thank you for what you do for Jesus and his kids. If you have any questions, comments, please comment down below. I'd love to connect with you on Facebook. Part of this is in my book, Why We Quit, available on Amazon. And I really hope for those of you that are burnt out, hang in there. There is a future and a hope. Look for God's direction. He hasn't abandoned you. There's still a future and a hope. All right, God bless. I'll see you next week here on the Peach Buzz. Bye-bye.